In open source we trust, yeah. That's, I think, quite a compelling start. There are plenty of dimensions in open source, and I'm pretty sure not everyone measures to which point open source currently is critical to what we do as an operator. I don't believe we are so much more advanced with open source than any other operator, so I guess what I'm about to say is pretty well shared across the operators community. First, if you consider everything in our businesses, I think open source is powering each and every device we're putting in the hands of our customer, right? There is Linux there, there is an accumulation of open source solutions in each and every device. So everything we do with our customer very much is powered with open source. I'm not even saying, speaking about every server in our data centers, which is powered with Linux. Moving to data centers. So, Mr. Thierry, I will bow to the work that has been done, a tremendous work that has been done to, let's say, open source our data centers, move from a totally proprietary and locked world towards a much more open, and I would say much brighter future, I hope, with OpenStack. It's not just OpenStack, it's the spirit that comes with, which brings us an opportunity to completely revamp and change the relationship with our ecosystem. So when I consider OpenStack, I consider this is Linux that will power my data center, but it is also bringing all partners, all vendors, to review their position, and for most of them to move from hardware to software, and to deliver to me a software that will natively interoperate with a basis which is not theirs, but the one of the industry. And that is a very deep shift for us, as we used to operate data centers in a very closed way, very manual way, very hardware-orientated way. But it is also a drastic shift to them, because when they were used to ship me some racks and piece of hardware and man days or man months of integration, blah, 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 the only thing I need from them is a link to their Git. That's a bit of a different thing, right? So the whole industry is being rocked by this OpenStack stuff. So I don't think you measure to which step you are important. Going beyond, it's not just the data center, it's the whole network. And we had, for instance, a very, very fruitful cooperation with AT&T. AT&T made something which was quite clever, which they called eComp, right? Which was a way to get control as an operator on the network and not just give the control back to vendors. Well, we had a lot of discussions and we decided we would turn that jointly into open source, because that was a way to gather the whole industry on one shared approach to the future of the network. And that has turned into ONAP. So if you take Linux, if you take OpenStack, if you take ONAP, we are just moving up the value chain step by step and bringing open source to each and every piece of our network ecosystem. And that is, again, a drastic shift. Because when you consider what ONAP is, and you put yourself in the shoes of our traditional partners and vendors, then tomorrow they just will register their applications into a store, and we're going to retrieve that application from the store, put it in a network, done, right? It should be, and obviously it will not, but it should be as simple as when you take your Android device and you just pull an app from the store. Wow. That's a change for an industry which was used to take 9 months to integrate the slightest piece of network node in their data center, right? So this is a kind of example of the shift in nature, but the shift in essence that the industry is turning through. Another element which I think is exemplifying how open source is critical to Orange. When you go and visit, for instance, teams which are developing our IoT platforms, it's about next door, 50 meters over there in that direction, look at their tools. The whole CI/CD tooling is open source. There's not one single piece of it which is licensed or proprietary. Why? Because by essence, when you get development teams jumping into a project, if they have to relearn everything around their environment, everything about the tooling, etc., you will have just a massive loss of time, right? So you go by default to the standards, and the standards are open source tools. Do they meet all our requirements? No. So instead of trying and get a vendor to enrich them, blah, 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 commit. Do the development, adapt it to your needs, commit, try and convince the community that it is valuable to the tool, and get the community to embrace your vision. It's a totally different relationship between Orange and everyone within Orange and their ecosystem. Meaning, don't put dollars on the table, put line of code. Meaning, the one who is making a difference is the one who is actually contributing and not the one who is signing the check. That's a total reverse way of thinking within the company, right? And that is what we call for with regard to how Orange should evolve. Now, I don't believe this is any way specific to Orange. I do believe deeply that every operator in the world is going through the same transformation. And that calls for the last bit of the transformation, which is really how does open source transform the culture? I was hinting at the developers. Developers are seeing something else in open source. It's about a culture of sharing. It's also about a culture of setting the highest standard of expertise and being recognized by peers, right? I think the other Thierry is extremely demanding when it comes to anything contributed back to OpenStack, right? And that sets the standard for our development team. If they want to be perceived as value-making by the communities, they need to be at the best level. And that's true for every community we may contribute to. Now, the peer recognition they will receive from the community is at least as valuable in their perspective as the one they will get from their management. That doesn't say that we should oppose them, right? So for instance, amongst the value and the culture change we should undergo as an operator is, okay, how do I integrate those feedbacks from the communities in my recognition system, not only as the management recognition for their contribution, right? This is a very deep cultural shift. Opening our way of working, our contribution expertise into the culture of the company. Goes together with agile methodologies, goes together with DevOps, blah, blah, blah. Draw the line. You will get a totally reversed way of thinking within Orange. So I think, in open source we trust. On open source we leverage. To open source we must contribute. And final, but not least, open source will change us much more deeply than we ever thought 5 to 10 years ago. Open source is not just about leveraging on Linux, right? Open source is about changing the way we interact with our ecosystem. There is maybe one bit where I saw Thierry was a little bit negative, and where I see a fantastic opportunity to reconcile different worlds. Standardization and standardization bodies. One thing which I think you underestimate is how much you influence them. For instance, when there are tricky stuff around how two systems should interact, either you spend ages describing by the detail each and every possible way, or you contribute a standard code that will demonstrate the system, which will be set as a reference, and by the way, obviously, it's going to be open sourced. So I think there is a need for standardization. I think there is a need for open source, and I do not want to oppose them. Actually, I would like to feed one with the other. And I do have a strong hope that by leveraging much more on software and open source, we might get the standardization more and more agile, more and more flexible, more and more to the tune with our actual needs. So, yeah, I hope one day you're going to go on scene and you will tell us we had a fantastic experience with operators because they brought us the best of both worlds, open source and standardization. And if that could set an ambitious target on us, let's take it. But welcoming open source in an organization is extremely demanding, is extremely challenging. It is a cultural challenge more than a technical challenge. We in Orange have decided to tackle that challenge and to really welcome open source in every possible way. It is shaking our way of working, our processes, our appraisals of people, etc., etc. So thank you a lot. I think OW2 is a long-time partner, and we intend to keep it that way. We have quite a lot of dependencies as Orange to open source, and we have more and more and more contribution to open source communities. So thank you a lot, and I will disappear so that you can all rush on the food. Unless you have questions.